We'll wrap up our countdown to the top stories of the year next week, but before we go tonight, we still have to find out what was number 6 in our list. For this, we'll look at the wall and immigration issues, most of them federal certainly, that touched home in New Mexico this year. Not only did construction begin on a portion of that wall in our state, but Mary, there was also the National Guard troops were sent to the border. We've had all kinds of different issues that have come our way from this situation. Where do we sit right now in the idea of immigration in our state? We're factoring in the attitude of our governor, the attitude of our legislature, our federal delegation. It's just a big, messy sort of a thing. Where are we right now on immigration?
Yeah, when we, there was a time when New Mexico wasn't really always incorporated and at the center of the border.
That's a good point.
And immigration, but I think that has changed gradually. Right. I think under President Trump, the border wall going up, I think Martinez supporting that and sending troops was a big deal for the state. It's hard to look at that issue now at the end of this year and not, figure out where it stands, because I think that's likely to change with the Democratic governor coming in. We were in the limelight with our detention facilities. Right. Yeah, especially the one in Cibola County to the west, for a couple reasons. One would be there was some legislative hearings as a result of good journalism this year to look at the state's agreement on those things and whether the state should exert more oversight over these private facilities that are detaining immigrants. And then in addition, there was the death of Roxana Hernandez, who had been held in the transgender unit at Cibola County, or in Cibola County, which to my understanding is also the only was the only transgender unit in ICE. So
I didn't realize that.
yeah,
okay.
So and that issue is not resolved either. It had made waves when she had died earlier this year, and now there are calls from high-profile lawmakers to get some answers to her death.
Exactly right. And as we think, again, let me touch on the governor here for a second. She had a choice to make. I would not perceive her as terribly close to this administration, but there was something that was in line with where they were with her in her attitude about these kind of things. Again, we talked about earlier about her prosecutorial side. This is just what she does. Where did she come out of this on this issue of immigration in our state? Did the situation improve under her tenure, or are we still in just sort of an odd spot?
Well, obviously most of the control is federal, so a governor can talk, but not necessarily have much of an impact. But if you remember when she ran the first time, she ran not as an anti-immigration person, but more as I am pro, let's follow the laws, get in line. Right. All the sayings that people who want to stop immigration say. She wanted to stop the driver's license for people who are here illegally. So I think that was always one of her strong points. She did break with Trump in his campaign when he kept characterizing Mexican Americans and other immigrants, as rapists and drug addicts, et cetera. So I think that was one of her strong points because she broke with her own party, probably to her detriment. I think her sending the National Guard to the border is more in line with what she's always believed, in that you need to have this solid border to stop people from coming over. Right. And it's less about her supporting Trump. And that's just, she's doing what she thinks should be done. So as we go out to a new governor, I don't think Lujan Grisham is necessarily that much softer on immigration because she's always been kind of a more moderate centrist. So we'll see how she does. I do think that we have to look at the agreements and how people are being treated. And does a state have any control over federal facilities? As we found out today, the little girl, the 7-year-old, who has died now, who was apprehended in Lawrenceburg, New Mexico, and then died in Texas. What control do we have? I think out of all of this, what I'm coming to as a citizen is that we don't have control over a lot of stuff that we thought we had control over. And I'm not sure that's any different for a governor as for just a regular person.
Sure, you gotta imagine those meetings, what can I do? And then after being told what you can't do, you know what I mean? It's got to be a difficulty. Andy, in the reporting of this, of course, this is always a fast-moving but never-ending situation here. The governor did have some support, if I seem to remember the polling correctly, on her immigration stances early on in her term, but something seemed to have changed over time a little bit. Where do you think New Mexicans are now, rank and file New Mexicans, if there's such a thing, on immigration now, outside the governor and outside of official people?
I think it's really hard to judge. Again, another reason why our state is so sort of unique and diverse in some of the ways we look at stuff.
Right.
We show up in the national news a lot, but not so much when you're talking about the walls or talking about Texas and Arizona, even in California. I don't think it's such a hardline view here in New Mexico. I think our opinions differentiate so much, and I don't know. I think we seem very different.
It's a tough one to assess. It really is. It's hard. You want to take a cut at that too, Jeff? It's hard to get a feel for that because anecdotally we can think one thing, or we hear from a lot of different people that's one thing. But when it really comes down to it, the idea of safety is a big deal for a lot of folks here. We are a border state, and that can't be discounted. That urge for safety here. So how do we balance those needs? It's awfully hard.
It is. It's an incredibly difficult conversation to have. And as somebody who's spent most of the last couple of years covering the federal law enforcement system and federal courts, this is what you see in federal court every day are these immigration cases and deportation cases and those kinds of things. And we, again, through the work of really good journalism, got a really rare glimpse inside the mind of a judge, Judge Brack, who's been doing these immigration cases forever and ever and ever, who just decided, I'm getting towards the end of my career, I'm going to sit down and have a conversation with a journalist and really describe what it's been like to be a judge and dealing with all of this. The other big thing for me, and this will be interesting to watch going forward, and it's already happening, is the way that New Mexico cities and counties and other kinds of entities start to embrace the notion of federalism and how we might protect the institutions of New Mexico from some of the more sort of draconian impulses of the Trump administration where immigration is concerned. We've seen businesses targeted in Santa Fe, which of course is a so-called sanctuary city, immigrant-friendly city. I just did a story a couple of weeks ago about the New Mexico Bar Association. There's a proposed rule now in front of the state Supreme Court that would allow undocumented people to be admitted to the State Bar of New Mexico and practice here as lawyers, right? So, and I think that is the tip of the iceberg. Right. I think you're going to see that for so many different professions, anything from doctors to cosmetologists, and who knows how all of that works out. But I think it will be interesting to see the way that continues to play out in terms of how New Mexico decides to shield itself from federal immigration policy that New Mexicans don't like.
It's a key point there. I appreciate that for sure. Inez, I'm thinking about also, I've never been to Columbus. I've never been to a lot of the towns down there. But it was so interesting to hear the reporting from some of the folks down there. So this is not that big of a deal. We don't understand why this is getting all that crazy. These folks need to be heard from more? Do our press folks need to get down there a little bit more and just say day to day, what is life down here like? What's going on?
I think that's incredibly important because when you look at border cities, there is no immigration crisis. So this is the fact that President Trump, ran on this supposed crisis, has, says we have to build a wall that isn't necessarily needed, and people are living their lives, going back and forth, living really in a place that's almost outside of country. El Paso, Texas, is one of the safest cities in the United States.
That's right. The numbers don't lie.
And yet we're putting all these people in attention where we don't need it, and we have other needs that are much greater that we could address.
That's right. Interesting point. That's all the time we have this week, but be sure to check in next time as we count down the top 5 stories of 2018, and be sure to weigh in with your list at NewMexicoInFocus.org. You can always reach us at NM In Focus on Facebook and Twitter.